Does Mr. Gaetz seek recognition? Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I must take note that as we're having this discussion today, the Attorney General is in the Senate, and he was just asked by Senator Grassley, given his testimony in the House, that there was no basis for his decision to create the school board task force in the absence of the letter from the National School Boards Association, and given the National School Board Association's apology and retraction of that letter, would the Attorney General be dissolving the school board task force? Astonishingly, he said he would not, which kind of gives up the game, that this was never about safety for educators or school board members. It was all about chilling parents' participation in the decision-making process that they were aggrieved by, a decision-making process that often embraces pseudoscience, that is reactionary, and that pushes critical race theory, which causes people to hate each other as a consequence of their own skin color or the skin color of the other students or the other professional staff that work in our schools. Speaking of chilling, it certainly seems that there hasn't been an adequate response to the argument that Mr. Massey made earlier in debate, that if this law were enacted, there would be a disincentive for people to seek mental health care. We don't want to live in a country where if someone needs access to that care, that they would be discouraged from doing so, fearing some broader deprivation of their rights. And while I know this must be a very difficult day for my colleagues who have personally felt the impact of shootings and mental health that results in suicide, we have to look at solutions that are actually tailored to solve the problem, not just bills that could potentially exacerbate those problems. And it seemed as though I would love to hear from my colleagues how you would expect people to reach out and get mental health care that they might need if they think that on the back end of that care, they would be deprived of their gun rights. Mr. Chairman, I heard earlier one of our colleagues say that there's just not a circumstance where a good guy with a gun is helpful when there's a bad guy with a gun, and I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record a ABC News piece entitled "Florida School Shooting Heroes Teary Tale, I'm No Hero, Folks."
Without objection.
And in this case, in Bay County, Florida, there was a violent person with a gun that showed up to a school board meeting and opened fire on the school board and the superintendent. And by the grace of God, he was unsuccessful in harming those school officials, but it was an off-duty police officer who was there in a security capacity, who had a firearm and was able to neutralize that shooter. So I think that in my state and in many others, broad deprivations of Second Amendment rights and sort of the de-gunifying of society won't lead to better safety outcomes. I would also take
Would the gentleman yield for a...
Well, I'm making an additional point, Mr. Cohen, and I know you were clear in your comments that you wanted examples from Memphis, so I hope you'll indulge an example from my community where
Thank you. We vacation there.
What's that?
I say we vacation there.
Well, we're always blessed to have you. And we hope you come frequently and know that there'll be a lot of folks that are utilizing their Second Amendment rights. It'll be honored to keep you safe. The other note that we've heard a lot about is hunting and self-defense. And I would just note that the Second Amendment is not about hunting and it is not about self-defense. Our founders believed to curate the right balance of liberties in our country so that it would never become necessary to engage, God forbid, U.S. troops with firearms from our citizens. But if we maintain a well-armed citizenry, that creates a balance of liberties and it retards a tyrannical government from being able to be overly forceful against our citizens. So I hope we'll understand that historical framework when debating the Second Amendment. If there are those who think we ought to repeal the Second Amendment, that we don't need armed citizenry to maintain liberties, then let's debate on those terms, not with these sort of paper-cut assaults on the rights that our citizens enjoy and that I believe are granted quite explicitly in the Constitution. And let's also hope that as the American people evaluate the actions of the Department of Justice, they see that a piece of evidence can be the basis for a policy. That evidence can be debunked and the policy can persist nonetheless. It harkens back to the Russia hoax where there was this big lie that Donald Trump was a Russian agent. And then that animated all this activity from the Justice Department that impaired the liberty of Americans. And it seems as though they're continuing on that trend. But now, instead of targeting Donald Trump, they're targeting parents who love their kids, who show up at school board meetings. And the Attorney General made clear today that he intends to continue doing so. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back.